So now you're the proud owner of a Forcefield outdoor pet fence. In terms of what comes inside in the package, you have an installation guide, the transmitter which is located internally either in the house or the shed, the collar unit, the collar itself, and the accessories to go along with the collar. The roll of wire which sets up your boundary fence, 2 batteries, and your adapter which powers up the transmitter. So, with the transmitter, it goes internally in your house or your garage, can be mounted with the mounting clip on the back. I suppose the first thing to do is to charge up your batteries. The unit comes with 2 batteries. There is a casing on the battery and a little groove on the casing, which fits in only one way to the housing, like so. It can only go on one way, so that's the correct way for the battery. In order for the battery to charge, we need to have a mini loop created before we create the full loop in the garden. So here's one we prepared earlier of the pet fence with some of the insulation pared back. So we simply push it up into the fitting. So now we want to power the transmitter to charge up the battery. So we put this side of the adapter in like so. We plug in the unit. So as I said, the battery is in there. There will always be one battery in this unit. It takes 16 hours to charge the battery, but when the fence is up and running, one of the battery units will be on the dog collar unit itself, so the other one will always be on heat charging. Even though it only takes 16 hours to charge, just leave it in the fence for safekeeping and the transmitter for safekeeping. So we have brackets on the back to mount the transmitter on the wall. We switch it on, and now all your lights are in place. Your loop, your battery charger, and your power light. So your battery is charging now, which will take approximately 16 hours. It's now time to assemble the collar unit. As I said earlier, there's some accessories for the collar unit contained in the bag, which I've emptied out on the table. Battery is the first one. Our 2 washers and 4 probes. 2 large probes and 2 small ones. The large probes are for a larger dog, and the smaller probes for a smaller dog. To insert the battery, we turn the collar unit around. The easiest way to undo this cap is just with a coin like that, and it pops out. It's important to point out there's 2 settings on the collar unit, high and low internally. High for a larger dog and low for a smaller dog. There's a switch internally so that you can flick it back from high to low. We've it set at low because we're using this unit on quite a small dog. To insert the battery, similar to the internal transmitter, the battery has a housing with a little clip on it. So the battery can only go in one way. You need to match the clip up with the housing unit itself. So it goes in like that. Just to do a test before we start, to ensure that the transmitter is working, we can hold it up close to the false loop. If it beeps, it indicates there's an electric pulse. So there we go, there's an electric pulse. There's also a further tester for when the unit gets a little bit older. It's more sensitive. It basically lights up when you hold the unit close to the loop. So we'll hold it there, it's beeping, but also just ensure that the 2 wires are in contact with the terminals and it lights up. The next stage is to connect the collar unit to the collar itself, which is contained in the box. So we open it out like so, place it over the transmitter unit. First thing to go on is the washer. Now you will see there's a little clip on the washer there which lines it up with a similar clip on the unit itself. So you line those 2 up, hold it down in place, and you'll hear it click into place. We're going to use the small probes because we're using kind of a small dog. You tighten in the probes. Hand tight is not quite enough, so we need to give it a little bit of a further tighten with a little pliers or spanner. So just get it that little bit tighter to ensure it doesn't come off. So we do the same with the second washer. Again, we're looking for this little clip here to match up corresponding there. You'll hear it clip into place. We'll go with the small probe thread it in. Needs to be a little bit tighter, as I said, than hand tightness. So we get our little pliers or a spanner, whatever you have close to hand, and you tighten it up a little further. So now we have our collar unit fully assembled. A few very important things just to summarise on. Before we install our battery, there's a high-low switch. So you need to set it for high for a large dog and to low for a smaller dog. The battery then goes in. It can only go in one way. You have to match up the clips. You tighten the cap back on with a coin. Then on the probes and washers, we've used the smaller probes because we're using it on a smaller dog. If you had a larger dog, you should use the large probes. With regard to the washer units, remember, there's a clip to match up. You make sure it matched up, you feel it click into place. You hand tighten the probes. Hand tightening it is not enough, they will come loose again. So you need, with either a spanner or pliers, to tighten them further until they're fully secure. So once we have the collar unit assembled, it's quite easy to put it onto the dog's neck, as you would any type of collar. So Kevin is going to demonstrate it here.
So we're just going to bring the collar underneath the dog's neck, up over the back of his neck, and we're going to clip it here at the back.
What's important, I suppose, to look out for when you're installing the collar, Kevin?
The most important thing to look out for, Pat, is that the unit is making contact with the dog's skin. Really not enough just to be holding in on the hair, has to be making contact with the skin.
Okay. In some cases, if you'd big dogs that have quite a lot of hair around the neck area, would it need to trim back the hair a little?
Yeah. Big dogs with a lot of hair, you're going to need to do a lot of cutting on the neck area. Really need to get good contact on that skin.
Okay. Very good. But overall, it's sitting there quite comfortably. The dog is quite happy. So that's the main thing. It has good contact with the skin, easy to install, works very good as a product. The next phase of our setup is to create our boundary loop with the pet fence wire. One thing to bear in mind, if your shed or the house where the transmitter is located is not in the corner of your property, it may be in the middle of it, you will need to create an area to get out to the boundary so the dog can cross over that. So to nullify the electric current going through the wire, we need to loop the wire across like that at 50 loops per meter. As I said, that will nullify the current going through the wire so that the dog can actually cross over that point, enable you to get your boundary out right along. This is illustrated here in our quick installation guide, which should be of use to you. Another thing to bear in mind is, over the life of the pet fence and over the life of the wire, accidents do happen in the garden. A lot of time this wire will get broken, okay? Via a lawnmower, maybe a spade, something like that will cut it. Don't panic, you don't need to install a whole new boundary loop. What we have included in the accessories pack is these pet fence wire joiners. So I'll just demonstrate how they actually work. So let's cut the wire. Okay, so now we have two ends. The wire is essentially broken, so we need to join it. So these are our connectors. There's two holes, so you push the wire in one side all the way through, push it in the other side all the way through, and there's a little cap here that we close down. When we close down that cap, there's glue contained in the cap. It emits the glue, which glues everything in place and creates a watertight seal. So that will be fine, and it will carry the current right along again. So as I said, it's your line fully repaired. There's no need to repair the whole pet wire line. So we just push that down like that. You can see the glue coming out. It takes about 15 minutes to set. And I said that will be watertight and carry the current around, no problem. Give it about 15 minutes to set. So now it's time to put down the boundary wire. So you select the location that you want to keep your pet in. Roll out your wire. It's always a good idea to roll it out and maybe leave it for a couple of days just to make sure you're comfortable with that area before you go to the effort of actually burying the cable. With a shovel or a spade, we can just create a little hole, a couple of inches below, open it up like that. So it's quite easy to bury the cable. As I said, it doesn't need to go down that far. 2-3 inches is fine. So you just slip it underneath like so. And you can close it back up just by compressing the soil around it. At corners, we don't go at a right angle. We will always go semicircular so it doesn't put too much pressure on the actual pet wire itself. So in corners, we go around like that. And then just compact the soil so it goes back down. Also very important, you don't hang it off an existing fence, you don't put it on top of a wall, you bury it a couple inches underneath the ground, okay? If you're approaching close to an electric fence, it's important that you keep a metre away from the electric fence because the current going through the other electric fence will interfere with the radio transmitters. So, that's how you do it, guys. You loop it all the way around, whatever area you've established you want to keep your pet in, then you bring it back to your shed or your property where the transmitter is, feed it back in and connect it back up to the transmitter. Then you have your loop fully created. A frequently asked question on the outdoor pet fence is how do I continue my boundary loop across my driveway? Again, quite simple. If it's a permanent structure of tar macadam or concrete, you get a console, cut across the driveway, just again a couple of inches underneath. You place the pet wire down into the groove and you cover it over and seal it with black silicone. Again, that will continue the boundary loop and keep your pet in right across your driveway. If it's a non-permanent structure, like gravel or something like that, you dig a little trench underneath. Again, you're only talking 2 or 3 inches below the surface. You put in suitable ducting, hydroder piping or something like that, and you feed the pet wire through the piping, through the ducting, fill it over with gravel, and again, that continues your boundary loop right across your driveway, allowing you to drive in and out your property, but not allowing the pet to escape. So now we have the boundary loop completed. We pull the 2 ends of the wire from the outside in so we can connect them back to our transmitter. I've peeled away some of the insulation on the wire. So to connect to the transmitter, as earlier, push it up and push it in, and the same with this one, push it up and it fits back in. A couple of things to point out on the internals of the transmitter. So we have large and small setting for a garden size. Now generally this will be a small garden. We recommend that if you go over, your boundary loop takes more than 2 rolls of the pet fence wire. There's 150 meters in each roll, so that's quite a large area. You set it onto the large setting. So if it goes on to more than 2 rolls of wire, you flick the switch to large. Otherwise, small is more than adequate. We have a boundary width dial here, which goes from min to max. So the idea of this, when you're training your dog, you would put it up close to max, which means they receive the shock about 1.25 meters away from the boundary loop. Okay? Maybe when you're training the dog you do that, but also if you have a particularly disobedient dog, you would do that also. Leave it close to maximum. Once the dog is trained and behaving better, you can bring it back down to the minimum, which means they almost can go right up to the boundary loop before they receive the stimulus. So now we've connected the wire back to the transmitter. We can turn on our pet fence. You will see 3 lights on, indicating that everything is fine. Power is on, battery is on, and the loop is fine. There can be 3 things to go wrong with it based on those lights. So the first thing, if we lose power, it will make a noise, okay, and the power light will flash. Second is around the battery. If there's a problem with the battery, or it's not charged enough, or it comes out, it starts to make a noise, and the light flash. And the third is around the loop. So if there's a break in the loop for any reason, we can demonstrate that. You will get a noise, and both the loop and batteries will be flashing. So they're the indicators as to the problems that can occur with the fence. So now our pet fence is set up and working. The most important thing with the pet fence is all about training your pet. We've included in the pack an extensive pet training manual. Please study it carefully and put it into practice in training your pet. If you do that correctly, you will have many years' peace of mind for the safety of your pet. And this really is a fantastic product.